Our second session is on facilitating decision making by the board. Let me introduce our three panelists who have had vast experience in board related matters and governance matters. Mr. N. Suryanarayanan is a director in CoreEl Technologies India Private Limited. He is a former compliance advisor of multiples PE and former head group secretarial and compliance of L&T Financial Services, now known as L&T Finance Limited. Mr. Ajay Agarwal, Company Secretary and Head Group Oversight of HDFC Bank Limited. The third panelist is Mr. Damodaran. May I now request Mr. Damodaran to welcome our speakers.
Please sit down, please sit down, please sit down.
Thank you. After you.
Good afternoon. I hope you've managed to get some tea and coffee in the interim. I know that some of you have had conversations among yourselves. Food for thought is always useful, but a cup of tea and coffee doesn't hurt, actually. That is what I read in the papers. Yeah, right. Let's get started straight away. This is the second such program we are doing for company secretaries. And when we did our first program in Delhi, we had two sessions again. It was structured similarly. The first session there was on the minimum information, and you recall that minimum information was center stage at that point of time a few months ago. Now the dust has settled on minimum information unless somebody wakes up again and says, no, there's too much in this, let us again revise this. But version 3, I think, has stabilized now. The second was on what we are about to discuss now. How do you extract value from the board? Because this is an overarching question that does not go away. You're all bright people, you are committed people, you are competent people, you want to do good to the company, to its stakeholders, etc. But between you and all those stakeholders are a bunch of guys who answer to the description of directors, board of directors. And whether you like it or not, part of what you have to do, a big part of what you have to do, is to ensure that these people are on the same page, understand what the company does, understand who its stakeholders are, understand what are the interests of the stakeholders, and understand how those interests are to be met by the board, by the management, by the rest of the organization. Now, this category of people called the board of directors comes in all shapes and sizes. And I don't need to tell you this, you know it better than I do. So you have people who are extremely well informed, sometimes experts in regard to the domain, sometimes they have just knowledge, sometimes familiarity, but some of them are experts, and expertise can be counterproductive in a board situation. Then you have people who are just making up the numbers. Somebody has nominated them to the board, therefore, like unwilling school children on Monday morning, they'll end up in the boardroom because attendance will be marked and they will get to know, the bosses will get to know whether this guy attended the meeting or not. Therefore, they turn up. They certainly have no interest in the agenda items, etc. And then you have people who have a point of view on everything under the sun. I describe people in the boardroom as being in two categories. those who have something to say and those who have to say something. And the people who have to say something invariably get more of the airtime, because chairpersons unfortunately don't know how to discipline these people. So they have a point of view on everything. They are knowledge proof. Knowledge does not enter into their systems, but they believe that they have all the knowledge it takes, and therefore they tend to derail the proceedings of the board. Right? So that is this body of people called the board that you deal with. As I said, they come in all shapes and sizes, some for good reasons, some for bad reasons. You are all a bunch of company secretaries. Some of you might be chartered accountants. Some of you might have friends in the chartered accountants profession. So don't get me wrong, but there was a time when public sector banks were looking out for board directors. And other than chartered accountants, nobody else wanted to be on the board because there was no compensation, certainly inadequate compensation, liabilities, no mature D&O insurance policies, which today you have. At that time you didn't have those. 2013 Act with 149(12) did not come into existence at that time. 1956 did not have a parallel provision for 149(12). Not that 149(12) protects you, it doesn't. That's a separate argument altogether. It's a fig leaf for protection. It doesn't protect you at all. So who wanted to be a director on the board? Very few people, except that it gave you some kind of prestige, etc. But chartered accountants were desperate to get on the board. Busy professionals, allegedly busy professionals, who were willing to commit days every month. And banks, board meetings happen more frequently. Some of you might be from banks. For what? To print on their visiting card, director of such and such bank. That is, it is one of those instruments of commerce, that visiting card, that the Reserve Bank has not authorized, right? It is not a currency note, not a negotiable instrument under the Negotiable Instruments Act, but it has great commercial value. So that kind of a board also existed in this country not so long ago. Now, who ensures that these guys actually transact business? All of you do. You and your colleagues who are not here today might be in some board meetings ensuring that the boards transact business. Entirely possible, right? So how do you extract value from the board? Let's assume there are a bunch of guys there. Let's make what lawyers call a rebuttable presumption that these are all good, well-intentioned guys. Let's make that presumption. And we'll start with that. And having said that, they don't automatically contribute by way of any valuable decision-making suggestions. So who ensures that? I imagine that you are the people who have to ensure that they don't violate the laws, don't violate the regulations, hopefully persuade some of them to read agenda notes before coming to the meetings. In fact, there are again three kinds of directors. Some who read agenda notes when you send it out to them 7 days ahead, some who read during the board meeting, and some who don't read at all. So all these categories coexist in the same boardroom, right? And you have to treat this as one composite whole and extract value. Thank God I didn't become a company secretary. I would never have succeeded in that business, right? So you have that kind of a board, well-intentioned, let's say, for argument's sake. How do you ensure that you extract value from these people? The board exists because it's the seat of wisdom. Management is the seat of knowledge. 24/7 you're dealing with the business, you know the domain, you know competition, you know your markets, you know everything else. The board members do not have access to that for good reasons. They are in some sense part-timers. They come when there are meetings. A good director will come even before there are meetings, between meetings, interact with senior management people to inform themselves of what is happening in the company. So my question to these two gentlemen who are alongside me, right, is an overarching question to begin with, which is it easy to extract value from the board? Ajay, starting with you.
First of all, Mr. Damodaran, thank you very much for inviting me and having me here. It's really a dream which has come true to share the dice with you, because we have always been seeing you as a
Yeah, you don't
regulator.
get too many people who are born before independence was still around. It's a rarity, all right. Okay.
And on the second, the disclaimer, company secretary, so we have a disclaimer is the first part of whatever we do. Ki whatever I am saying here, these are my personal view and not the view of my board of directors or senior management. These are my view. Now the question is how to extract value from your board of directors. And I totally agree with you that here company secretary plays a very important role on how we share the information, how the flow of information, what is the timing of the flow of information. So what we do in HDFC Bank. I think you must be knowing we have generally 16 to 18 board meeting a year, and 16 to 18 NRC and 16 to 18 audit committee.
There's somebody from the State Bank here, no? Where is she? How many do you have? 52. Okay. No. Go ahead. Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the number of meetings which we handle. Last year we had 143 board meetings and the committee meetings. So which means 12 meeting per month. Now saying that, you can understand for the companies which are having only 6 board meeting a year. So how we go about it, I can say how we can go about it, because to say that how to extract value is a big question and for a company secretaries. What we do, we internally we have set a deadline of 10 days. Before 10 days of the board meeting, the entire year calendar is out. So before 10 days, you have to, each department, each one function, each vertical has to send us the agenda document. Then what we do, we use Copilot to generate a one-pager executive summary for each of the agenda item. With that agenda item, we send one-pager executive summary in a given format to our board of directors. 7 days before the agenda is being finally sent to the director, we have a pre-briefing which each of the committee chairperson or the board chairperson, before even sending the agenda item. Okay, these are the agenda items. Each functional person who has the agenda item, they come and explain. Means it's a pre-run of the board meeting. It is a full day event wherein everyone comes as if they are going to make a presentation to the board. They comes and make a presentation to the chairperson of the board or the committee, so that chairperson is aware of all the agenda item. He knows how he has to steer the meeting. And then we segregate the agenda items into approval, noting and other discussion item. Approval item also we sequence whatever are the heavy duty items which require more discussion, which require more informed decision, are placed at the starting of the meeting. After that is done, the agenda notes are being circulated to all the directors, mostly 7 days in advance, except for the financial result or some other document which may be treated as a unpublished price sensitive information. After that, we give an option to the directors in case they want to have some feedback or they have some question, they can reach out to the respective verticals head. Like if it is for the risk, to the risk department, if it is relating to the compliance, to either to me or the compliance head, or if it is internal audit, then to the internal audit head. Because being a bank, we had lot of other statutory assurance verticals for which they are responsible to that. And there, how it goes. Now we will go after that a little later. So this is the process which we follow to ensure that the director has the relevant information, the directors can participate really well and contribute.
Suri, before you come in, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was with a bunch of directors, about 30 directors, very seasoned people, very experienced people. And I made a statement there, and I want you to comment on that. I said, throughout the world, there's nothing called a good board. There are boards which are terrible, there are boards which are value neutral, and there are some boards which, more by accident than by design, become value-adding boards. Not that they want to, right? Not that they know they're doing it. Is that what you make of boards, or? Because the one thing about Suri is he doesn't pull his punches, which is why he's the right man to ask this question to. Right, yeah.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for the privilege of sharing this platform, and welcome to all of you. Now, answering your question very specifically, see, I think first of all, the management has to decide what they want, the executive management, what I mean, what they want from the board. So, is it okay, there is a, something which is required by law, it is constituted in the way, independent directors, etc., audit committee chaired by so and so. So, do you just want them, so executive management will have its way and you just have them to come and approve, or the board members, it is presumed that they have a lot of experience, a lot of talent, and they have worked their way upwards from a very basic level to a CXO level or CEO level. Do you want to extract value from them, or do you just need them for just coming and approving whatever the executive management wants? I think once that decision is taken, then this is path A and path B, and based on the culture in the company, whether you want to take path A or path B, I think the rest of the steps follow.
Okay. And your general comments on the subject? How do you extract value? Before
Yes.
I come to Ajay. Yeah.
So, here again, as I said, that it is presumed that the executive management wants to extract value from the board, and they have not there just for routine approvals or whatever the executive management wants, just come and approve it without too much of questioning and all that. So, let us take the approach that we have eminent members on the board. They are there because of what they are, career wise, whatever qualification, etc. We want to extract value from them. So, once the culture of the company is, yes, the board has to this thing, because HR has got an appraisal process for every level of employee, right from basic to CEO. Now, let us not talk about board evaluation, that is a separate topic, I do not want to get into that. But basically, I think a lot of European companies have this practice where the board itself is evaluated, and have they contributed to the company strategically or in terms of governance, etc., that is decided. So, once you decide that you want to extract value from the board, then I think the company secretary, the KMP, has to consciously work, of course with the CEO and the chairman, etc., consciously work on this and see that directors add value to the board decisions and board discussions. So, I hope I have answered your question, sir.
No, this question is not easily answered, but it's good for a start. It's like playing out the first 6 balls in the match without scoring too many runs, let's say. Ajay, I want to come to you. As a company secretary, you obviously have to interact a whole lot with the chairman of the board, right? What is the role of the chairman in ensuring that the board discharges its responsibilities, and how are you able to aid that process?
This is a very important point. I don't think so. I would be speaking as many times to my managing director in comparison to my chairman, because the interaction which I have with my chairman is much more than the managing director or any other.
Is that a function of the respective personalities, or?
I think it's because the responsibility that has been casted on the chairman to get through the agenda item and get through before that also what comes to the board and what doesn't come to the board. Is the board interfering into the running of the company, or they are giving a strategic direction? So first, where the interaction between the company secretary and the chairman comes is to decide what is the role of the board. Is it going to be running the company, or is it going to be strategy or a focused approach, a vision or a mission? So my interaction with my chairman starts with that. And then how best we can arrange the document, which director has what expertise and what matter can be referred to that director, so that he can bring to the board much more informed, means we can help the board to an informed decision. Suppose if we are discussing about some regulatory changes which are having an impact on the bank as a whole, then a director who is expert in the legal, through chairman we request him, sir, this matter you have to apprise to the board. Maybe you have to add some value to it. So that even before the board meeting, the directors know in some of the specific agenda item they have few roles to play. And what you said in the starting, what you are supposed to say or you want to say. It's we bifurcate on that.
So Suri, my question to you, who sets the agenda for the board?
It is like this, sir. I think here the CS plays a very important role. That is, he or she knows that these items have to go through the board for the forthcoming meeting. So prepare as much as possible, have all that in place. And it is not only the approval items, etc. Discuss with each and every CXO well before the meeting. Are there things which need to go to the board in the next meeting? What approvals do you require, etc. Individually discuss with all the CXOs, then make a draft agenda completely, and then especially when there is a non-executive chairman who is not that much involved with the executive management, present this draft agenda and says that these are the things which from my knowledge and from discussion with the CXOs I have prepared. Now I feel that these items need addition. So can I, and probably he or she sounds out the chairman that these are the items which to the best of my knowledge and discussion with all the CXOs need to go there. And this is the regulatory landscape where a few more items need to come in, and it will be good to have these items. So have a list, must form part of the agenda, desirable to form part of the agenda, discuss it with the chairperson, and then in discussions, and this all has to happen well in advance. I mean, typically if you are having a board meeting on 3rd of January, I think the ideal time to start these discussions with the chairperson, even assuming that there are monthly board meetings and all that, I think it is at least 20 days, 25 days in advance, not just 10 days before the board meeting where the agenda has to go out in 7 days and then you come under time pressure. So if you, the starting point in extracting value from the board is having a very, very comprehensive agenda well in advance, and then this is deliberated with the various CXOs, etc. And you have a list which then if you include all this in the agenda, automatically there is an expectation that you will extract value from the board.
Suri, just to add to
Do your
Suri.
independent directors contribute at all to the setting of the agenda? Because we believe now that earlier the agenda used to be set for the board, now it has to be set with the board. So do the independent directors have any voice at all in what comes to the board for discussions?
Sir, here again, as you rightly said, there are directors and directors and directors, right? And some people, I mean, we have no control on this. They come for the board meeting, sit through, and then when assent or dissent is required, they give that. there are some people who want to know, and it is not because of curiosity or something. They feel they will be contributing. Like you may have some IT specialist, or you may have somebody who's been a financial specialist. So once I think the company secretary knows the likely contribution, the likely strengths of the directors, then involve such people who will play an active role in having what you call a robust agenda. And it need not be, I mean, if you have a 10-member board, for example, and 6 independent directors or 5 independent directors, it is difficult to reach out to each one of them. You know who are the people who take interest in setting the agenda. Discuss with them. It's a private chat. You don't even have to talk through email and all that. And it goes a long way in setting an agenda which is wholesome. This is my view, sir.
Ajay?
Yeah. So how it happens to us, we have around 40 separate verticals. So each vertical, before 10 days, they send us their agenda line items. We consolidate it. Independent directors, sometimes they also reach out to us, we want to add these few agenda items. Mostly from
They reach
IT.
when you reach out to them asking?
No,
or
I
on their
don't
own?
reach out
On
to
their
them.
own.
On their own. Once we have sent our notice of the board,
Okay.
they reach out. Sometimes it has happened because some matter relating to IT governance or something, they have reached out. And we have added that. And once we go to the chairman with that list consolidated, the chairman decides on the item, but he cannot reject or he cannot delete any agenda item. At most, we will show it is withdrawn from this meeting and it will go in that next meeting. So what the chairman, he can add the agenda items, but he cannot remove or delete basis of his view, no, I don't want this agenda to be in the board meeting. If the business people or if the vertical has decided that this agenda needs to be, this requires board approval, it requires board approval, either at this meeting or the next meeting.
Okay. So your board really works as a unit to see that the right agenda comes to the board.
Yes.
What about the discussions in the boardroom? How do they take place?
Okay, it is again like this, sir. I mean, see, first requirement is to have a well-informed chairperson of the board, because ultimately the steering in the board meeting is going to happen by the chairman. The KMP may not have too much of a role. He or she can intervene, but not have too much of a role. So once the chairperson is well informed, possibly, especially in the case of a non-executive chairperson, the KMP may know the directors better than the chairperson himself or herself. So sensitize the chairperson that, see, when I had discussions with the independent directors on setting of the agenda, these were the points which came up. So this director may raise these points, and how do I handle this kind of situation? So you sensitize the chairperson that this is the probable direction in which the discussions would go. And especially when it is a tight scheduled board meeting, sometimes you have two committees and then a board and all, it has to run as per a very, very tight schedule. And tell that chairperson that, see, this is the likely direction of the discussions. So let us steer it in this particular fashion. It should not happen, I mean, that the chairperson tells the company secretary what to do. Actually, the company secretary acts as a advisor to the chairperson, especially when that person is non-executive. So I think he or she is a very valuable advisor to the chairperson on how to steer the proceedings in the meeting. And second thing, I have seen this happening in audit committee meetings when the statutory auditors come in. And then, you have an audit committee of say 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Now the statutory auditors, they like to go on presenting slide after slide after slide, all that this thing. So at some point of time, you know that you are running out of time, and then the board members may come and wait outside, which is not a desirable outcome. I mean, they are all busy people, independent directors. So you kind of send a chit to the audit committee chairperson. Please give this person another 5 minutes, 10 minutes, beyond that this thing. So you give this kind of hints, and I think this maintaining this timeliness of the committee meeting or the board meeting, That is the KMP's single responsibility. You can't even pass it on to the chairperson. So, this is how it should go.
So how important is sequencing the agenda items?
That is very, very, very important.
Because I hear occasionally from people, compliance takes up a lot of time. We have no time to discuss business. You keep hearing this, much less than a few months ago, but it's still there.
So what we do, as per the RBI regulation, the chief compliance, we have a chief compliance officer who is not the company secretary. He reports to the audit committee. So most of the compliance matter goes to the audit committee, and from audit committee it comes to the board.
This is banking compliance.
This is banking
compliance from secretarial.
As listing from secretarial compliance. And as regards secretarial compliance, these are we have bifurcated our agenda into two. We have said governance is compliance related matter is only for noting or wherever approval is required, it is only for the approval. So we have put it at the end so that that's what I said. We say what are the approval items, which are the heavy lifting items. Those takes the major in the hierarchy, those are the first discussed matter. In governance, yes, if suppose some major event has happened, or if there is some major penalty or a so-called notice has been received, which is very important for the board to discuss, it takes a center stage. So it depends on every meeting, the agenda is being shuffled to see where we need more discussion at the meeting should be at the first. And then what happens in our board meeting, the chairman after all the approval items, he calls out and says these are the noting items. Ajay, do you think we need to be apprised of any important matters in this? If not, noted item are noted. So that the main time, the 90% of the time of the board goes into approval item and discussions.
You see, before the secretarial standards came, I think half the board's time was taken in approving the previous meetings minutes, at least half. So it reminded me of the old television serials where the story moves only in the second half. The first half is all recap, right? It's only, as my son used to say when he was very small, I asked him which part of the television program you like, which is your favorite program. He said after the break. that was his best program because then he got to see something new, right? So now that is not there, it becomes a lot easier to devote the morning time, if I can call it that, to the more substantive items. And yet, in some companies, what happens really when you send out the agenda note, I've seen this even recently, you're sending the board pack out 7 days in advance. So that box is ticked. What is it you're sending out? It contains, of course, the minutes of the previous meeting, which has already been approved anyway for noting. It will have your circular resolutions, if any, which are again coming for noting. It might have the action taken report if the company secretary is generous enough to share it 7 days before rather than at the board meeting. Then comes the problem areas. Items such and such, and these are heavy items, important items for the board. A presentation will be made at the board meeting, or so and so will brief the board meeting. Where is the 7 days notice? All that you're telling me in the board pack is that somebody is going to make a presentation on the day of the meeting. So if I want to be an informed director contributing to discussions, I'm getting the information only then. Then I have to absorb it, digest it, frame my questions and ask. A lot of time will be lost. Is that practice still continuing? Should it be outlawed? I have suggested to SEBI that they should enter the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, that you should impose penalties on this and you get the board to take a decision first. What is it that cannot be shared 7 days in advance? We all do it at the beginning of the year. You decide what are the items where you cannot give 7 days notice. Everything else must come to the board 7 days before, otherwise penalize the company for that.
I think it's a very relevant point, sir. See, I think the board meeting should not take up time in the directors seeing the presentation for the first time, understand, because as sir rightly pointed out, 7 days in advance it has gone. The agenda note says a presentation will be made at the meeting. It can be HR, it can be some marketing, whatever is there. Now if the director is going to come to the board meeting and understand, then make up his or her mind what queries to ask, etc., that is not going to be a productive meeting. I think with due regards to UPSI, where also you can have sufficient safeguards. First of all, use a board portal. I think all of us do that. I mean, if you are still using Gmail or whatever other mail, then all the best to you. First of all, this thing, use a board portal, which is a very, very secure means of communication and where information leakage is automatically prevented. Now the second thing is, with due regard to the sensitivity, UPSI and all that, insider trading and all that, I think every presentation which is to be made at the meeting has to reach the directors at least 48 to 72 hours in advance, and if it is not going to be UPSI and that kind of thing, send it along with the agenda notes itself. It is not difficult if you plan it out. Send it out and then reach out to the directors, ask them are there any clarifications. Probably it may be some highly technical matter or a very financial matter. Connect those directors with the respective CXOs. Have all the discussion, have all the understanding. So, like this judges, when there is a day fixed for judgment, for delivering the judgment. I don't think any judge comes and reads the case at that particular, hearing. When the Supreme Court pronounces judgment, the justices on the bench have already done their homework. They are ready with the judgments, etc. I think directors need to be similarly placed. They make up their mind what queries to ask, if at all, at the meeting, and assent or dissent, they come prepared. It is not that they understand and then the discussion goes on. That is very, very unproductive, especially when it is 60, 70 agenda items, 10 of them are strategic and all. It's going to be very unproductive.
I think you're very charitable to judges, but Ajay, let me come to you, because again, these are all rebuttable presumptions. We assume that they've applied their mind. Maybe a young lawyer who is working with them has applied his or her mind. I'm not disputing that. Now, in some cases, you can outsource that. Now, of course, you can do it through AI. You can get your judgments written, but earlier you could get some good lawyer to write it for you and give it to you. These things have continued. Tell me the role of the board in strategy. We are looking at a composition of individuals, some of whom may not understand the domain or may have nodding acquaintance with the domain. That's it. You're expecting these persons to contribute to strategy because the board has to take part in finalizing strategy even if the first draft comes from management. First draft has to come from management, but the board has to contribute. But the level of knowledge, the level of, in some cases, involvement, they say, what do we have to do with it? It gets finalized, management will execute it, we don't have anything to do. You sense that there is an ownership of the board in this, and are they equipped to contribute to strategy? And if not, what will you do for that?
See, first is a short-term strategy and the second is a long-term strategy. First is strategy for 1 year, next year. That is.
But is that strategy at all? That is my view.
That is either it is
I will share something with you before you proceed. I was invited to talk to the senior people, 3-4 levels, in a public sector bank. This was called the annual strategy meeting. So I went there and the previous session was going on. There were 8 people on the desk. These were all the various field managers, whatever they call it, right? And there was a lot of data-heavy presentation behind each of them, their areas, what work had been done in regard to what kind of work. It was a strategy meeting. Last year's target, this year's target, and what is the achievement last year. It was all put up there. So I asked the managing director who was sitting with me in the audience next to that, is this meeting discussing strategy? He said, yes. So my understanding of strategy is, it's not incrementalism.
Yes.
That you can't say, I did this last year, I'll do 10% more this year. you got to write on a clean slate. So yes, you can't wish away the past, but you should look at what is possible. Several things have changed. Within the company, outside the company, several things have changed. How do you strategize in regard to that? But what is your understanding of board contribution to strategy?
So that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
The short-term strategy, which is for 1 year, it is not a strategy, but a goal setting.
It is more tactical
It
interventions,
is,
if you ask me.
yes,
Yeah.
it is a goal setting.
Okay.
What you want to achieve in this year by your various business verticals. But the strategy comes since we are into many fields, many subsidiaries and all. What the board actually wants the management to come, what are the various geographies you want to enter? What those geographies will give you? What are the different kinds of projects you want to undertake? Are there any acquisitions planned by any of the subsidiary? So like this, so these things the board asks before the board gives few questionnaires to the management. Are you thinking about these things in the next 5 years? And then not only the management of the bank, but the subsidiaries also. They also put down something, gives a sheet of paper, and it is discussed at the board meeting. And what I have generally seen, the board contributes. Means they are knowledgeable people. They may not have a
That's
domain.
a question I'll put to the audience a little later. Does
Yes.
the board contribute? A little later. Yeah. Okay. I said this so that they can be prepared, but you go ahead. Yeah.
So, they may not be a domain expert, but they know what are the financial resources
Okay.
of the company. Whether the company would be able to do those things which the management is planning. If yes, do we need extra funds? Do we need it through by way of a capital or by way of tier 2 bonds or by way of ECBs and all? So these are actually discussed, and some board certainly plays an important role. So we won't have a concept of the board, they will become a rubber stamps.
Some of them think that that is their role, but on strategy, what are your thoughts?
It is like this, sir. I think annually at least once, preferably more than that. First of all, the executive management decides, as Ajay was explaining, the 1 year, but preferably this should extend to 3 years, 5 years, as long as you can foresee. In today's uncertainty, 3 years is more like it, but I think that should be the minimum. So the executive management frames what is the strategy, everything, and then there is a meeting of minds with the executive management that this is what we want to do. Then the next stage is you call the directors, and it is not a board meeting because no minutes are made and no recordings are done, and make a presentation to the board. And this can be, an off-site or on-site. I think that is not important, but basically 2 to 3 days where, you completely thresh out what is possible. Now, I'll tell you what is the role of directors. The directors may be experts, may not be experts in what the company is doing, but some of them are able to relate that, when during our career, when the company took this particular path, these were the pitfalls. These were the areas where, we should have watched out and then we made a mistake. So present it to them and leave a free for all discussions, no notes taking, nothing except that making note of what the directors are saying. And I think over this 2 days or 2.5 days, you have a meeting of minds of the entire board, executive and non-executive. This is where we want to be 1 year down the line, 3 years, preferably 5 years down the line. I mean, you can keep changing it, but it should be there. I think this is very, very critical. Otherwise, the strategy being discussed as one item on the agenda of the board meeting is not done.
Like the board asks, you have 5,000 employees in the IT department. So do you want to have a GCC? Or separate subsidiary company for the IT, explore it and come back to us. So these are the board has to keep on hooking this thing, and they have to also hook to the management.
Is AI getting discussed at all in boards? And if so, are company secretaries facilitating that?
I would put it from my experience. I think if it is not happening, if the executive management is not proactive in discussing how AI can disrupt or help the various businesses, I think it is the board's let us say basic duty to ensure that there is a discussion and give them a timeline. Okay, the next 2 months you come and tell us each area of the company, right from customer acquisition, material procurement, HR, finance, etc. How AI can be a source of support to us, and also on the market side, how AI can be a threat to us, how lower cost competitors can come in and disrupt our business model, etc. So if the management does not do it because they are too preoccupied with what they are doing, running the company, I think the board needs to drive it, and if they are not doing it, then it's a failure of their responsibility.
Your thoughts
I
on
totally
this?
agree. See, for a bank, we need to have a IT strategy committee. So their entire focus is on the IT and AI and all. It is discussed at length. Then it comes to the board also. Even in our case, we have invited faculties from University of Boston to come and give a full day to training to our board and the senior management on the AI and how it plays a role. So AI, to every meeting it is being discussed, how it is impacting
So
our...
you're getting from Boston. Because somebody said AI expands as American influence. I don't know. Okay. Any last thoughts on subject before we throw it open to the audience? And I'm sure that lots of them have very valid points to raise. Yeah.
I'll just take half a minute maybe. I think if the company secretary perceives himself or herself as, like olden days, the CFOs were not called CFOs, they were called accountants. That means they keep on recording what goes on, and at the end of the year they present an accurate record of what goes on. They have done their job, accountant. Today CFOs cannot live like that. Similarly, if the company secretaries think that having this minimum statutory meetings, recording the minutes, sending the agenda, or rather meeting the requirements of secretarial standards, if that is all that they are required, then I think this can be done by somebody who has got a graduate qualification or something like that, and they don't deserve to be called governance professionals as the institute is now calling them. They deserve to be called company secretaries only. So I think this extracting value from the board and governance has to be driven by the company secretaries. You cannot wait for the chairperson to drive it or the board to drive it. It has to be driven by the company secretaries. That is my thought, sir.
100% agree with you.
Okay. Right. Okay. We'll throw it up. The lady first. She managed to get the mic first.
Thank you, sir. So very interesting conversation, and obviously we are all able to relate a lot. I feel that effective decision making at a board is truly, most importantly, the function of what is the quality of the board members you have, what is the diversity on the board, and the diversity of the skill sets. And also a lot depends on the personality of the individuals that we have, on the questions that they ask, on the whys, But however, of course, how we can contribute as company secretaries, and just like to share some of the best practices that we have been following at the Mahindra Group and specifically at Mahindra Finance. And most of these practices, and in fact, have also come in from as per the inputs received from the board members, particularly the independent directors, when we do the performance evaluation or they have their separate meetings. So some of the best practices which have been influenced and been recommended is obviously how we can help is in terms of the timeliness of the data that goes and the quality of the data. So being in financial sector company, there's a lot of data that goes from a regulatory perspective, etc. And making sure that what we also do is, like you said, we create a summary of the key proposals that goes to the board. That has been appreciated a lot. And like sir, you mentioned that it's important that the presentations are also shared with the board in advance. So apart from the ones which are UPSI, which go a couple of days in advance, Our endeavor is that all the presentations which are functional presentation, be it on risk, cyber security, that goes along with the agenda. That is one. Secondly, while detailed presentations are shared with the board on the board portal, one of the inputs that came in and we've started implementing, we don't have the functional heads to present the entire presentation as is, because then that's eating up a lot of time. So they've been suggested to make a summarized presentation where they want to get value from the board and put up only those matters with an assumption that board members have read the pre-reads that have gone to them. Apart from that, board wants to be assured that they are compliant with the regulatory aspect of what they should be reviewing. So we've made a very detailed charter which encompasses not only the regulatory bits but also the inputs and the important topics that should come, like be it discussion on AI, cyber security, risk management, ESG. So make sure that we have a calendar of presentation throughout the year and we push those matters, ensure that we have a frequency of discussion on those key matters. That's where we play a role. And we have started giving quarterly confirmation to the board and the committees that the charter that is laid out is being complied with, and the frequency at which it has been complied with. So just wanted to share some of the matters. And with regards to setting up of the agenda, as it's very important in terms of the prioritizing the key matters. So we also have a similar practice where we keep the deliberation, decision-making matters at the priority, and the ones which are regulatory, which are taken as noted. However, when we fix the agenda, we share the agenda with the chairpersons, respective chairpersons, to seek their inputs. If they want to add any topic, then what we have listed down. So these are some of the ways where...
Your company is lucky. You had Manohar Bhide steering it for many years, and you can't get better than that. So he must have laid down a lot of good practices, I imagine.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Anybody
Thank you,
else? Yes, go ahead, Subbu.
Sir,
Tell us about Lakshya. Lakshya is 3 years, 5 years?
5 years, sir.
5 years, yeah, that was
yeah.
my recollection. So when I think in terms of strategy, I think in terms of Lakshya, I think that is the right kind of time frame.
The 5-year strategy which L&T works on doesn't actually stick to the numbers, but it also to the business units. What
which
should
business
be the,
you keep, which you shed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Those kind of this thing. That's on the strategy. And to just to answer your point on does the board contribute to the strategy? What we have observed is over the years, the independent directors have become more vocal. The strategy is not just the 2-day or the 3-day onsite session, but throughout the year, we have seen independent directors giving their observation as to what is happening, they're observing in the other boards. Right, and that serves as a base for the strategy, and board starts delivering very effectively, right? And of course, as a secretary, the major contribution which I have, at least with my peers, have seen is, as an unbiased observer sitting in the board, the secretaries bring a lot of value addition. They, in fact, tell the chairman or the CMD as to what is the topic which needs to be assessed, what is not to be assessed, which has been overkilled or underkilled. Right. This is something which the company secretary should do. Being you getting a full overview, which none of the other executives in the organization do get. You're in a very unique position. I think you should leverage that and expand your role based on that. Third point, sir, which I have is, though we have seen the boards discuss on business, strategy, operations with all ifs and buts, but where I've seen the boards that have not delivered much, I don't know if my other people also agree here, is on the succession planning. Some of the boards and NRCs have been shying away from succession planning. We have seen a lot of noise when we go with this topic to the top management saying this is something which has to be presented to the board or NRC. I think that's one of the grey area which we observe. These are the points from my side now.
No, I think the board wants to know, but the management doesn't want the board to know. And
that's been
therefore the item doesn't get taken up. No, I know that for a fact. See, one of the things which the law requires companies to do in Schedule 4 is, and you mentioned flow of information, adequate and timely information. Have you come across any director who in the course of evaluation said, we don't get the information, the quality is rubbish, we don't get it in time?
Sir, I have got this in my earlier company.
The director actually
yeah,
said
very
that.
raw comment I have got, and it's been well deliberated.
Okay, right.
So if I can
Yes.
add a few comments, I'm Radhika from Hindustan Unilever,
Yes.
and just completely relate to maybe not in terms of the volume of the work, Ajay, which a bank can manage, but we are close to 40 meetings in a year, so definitely a lot of work goes
Shouldn't there be a law against it? No, I'm
No,
saying
I
this
think-
seriously because the more meetings you have, the more routine it becomes. And meetings are not given the kind, not that anybody wants to underperform, but it leads to an excess of meetings will lead to some kind of underperformance, is my guess.
Sure. Well noted, Mr. Damodaran. It may work for certain companies. For certain companies, I can speak on behalf of my company, I think we want that active engagement from our board members, and it's a two-way sort of a relationship there, because management definitely wants inputs and the board is also actively involved in some of the aspects. On strategy, in fact, I wanted to commend one of the good things that we do at HUL is we, apart from having a 3-day sort of a deep dive discussion on businesses, etc., we look at strategy holistically. So it's not only about business numbers, projections, portfolio transformations, it's also about HR, culture, talent, culture of the organization, what are the other aspects, the supply chain part of it. So it's a very holistic discussion which happens on a yearly basis with the board. So that's one of the good practices we follow. And I think in terms of managing the board meeting, I think the role of company secretaries moved long back from just preparing the agenda and the minutes to being rather custodians of information, and they look at it as we are actually governance architects of the company, because we are the ones who will make or break the company's board culture, and the management and the board looks to us for advice as to what should be the matters that should be brought to the board and the ones which are for information. At HUL, one of the good things that we've done is we've created some sort of a guideline for all our senior management as well as all the custodians who interact with board members on a periodic basis, that the agenda papers have to be extremely sharp. We need to know what decision we require from the board, so that the decision making is much more effective. And at the same time, the things which are different from, which require action from the board, and the ones which are only for the information of the board are very clearly segregated. So it's easier for our independent directors to, read the agenda papers much well in advance. So yeah, those were some of the thoughts.
You are very lucky that the management and the board look to you for everything. That luck is not available to many people.
Yes.
Meenal, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
I wanted to share about stakeholder management program of CRISIL, and credit to sir first of all to bring it on the agenda at the SRC. So you will remember you made us expand the remit of the SRC from shareholder complaints to stakeholder complaints. So we look at all stakeholder complaints, and there are various means in which these are collected into the company, and that actually forced us to put in place a program whereby on a quarterly basis all stakeholder complaints, whether it's clients, employees, shareholders, all of them are collected, collated, and then presented to the board. But so beyond that, we are now looking at stakeholder engagement, whereby the committee also looks at the engagement scores of the stakeholders, which you collect through various surveys, whether it's an NPS or any other survey that you do, including vendor surveys and all of that. And that is what gives us the confidence to put this out in a sustainability report, that this is the feedback from our stakeholders. These are the expectations, because this is based on hard surveys. It's not anecdotal anymore. And the third part is, beyond that, engaging with the stakeholders. So alongside our board meetings, we have client events. The board engages with clients. We invite our clients to talk to our board members during the board cycle. I mean, maybe we plan for a 1-hour session with the client. There are talent showcases, like we have floor walks and things like that, where the board engages with the talent. We have one-on-one sessions for senior management with the board members. So all this gives a outside-in perspective. So it doesn't remain, just limited to what the management presents to the board. The board actually gets to interact with the stakeholders so that they can form their own opinion on what the company is doing with regards to stakeholder management. This is just what I
No,
want
the
to do.
SRC
And
is one committee where the Companies Act has sold the stakeholders short. They renamed the committee in grandiose fashion from Shareholder Grievance Committee to Stakeholder Relationship Committee, abandoned the wide body of stakeholders because now you have only holders of securities that you've got to look at as per the Act. The relationship never got operationalized. It was still responding to what people came to. You never moved. I think that is a committee, the remit of which has to be expanded. The only committee that got worse treatment by omission is the Risk Management Committee, which the Companies Act did not even think of or look at, and SEBI had to bring it up later. That's another point. But we should hear a public sector perspective. That is important. Yeah.
So I can share the practice which we follow.
No, you heard people mentioning that you get good directors on the board.
Yeah.
And I was recalling a conversation I had with one of your previous chairpersons
Yes, sir.
on the quality of directors of the board.
So I would say quality of directors, because being a public sector, the power to appoint doesn't vest with the board or NRC in public sector. So it comes from the administrative ministry. So it's been a mix of very good directors who got involved in the review of projects and ensured
Very good by accident.
excellent.
Because
Excellent.
otherwise they wouldn't have found their place on that
Excellent,
board.
excellent. No, in PSUs, like they find place in the boards by other means also. So we got excellent where the discussions on projects and important areas when the company was fixing its strategies or diversification, they contributed significantly, and which has helped the company today. When we look back, those projects have really done very well for the company. So in my view, like what the practice which we follow is, whenever the new directors are appointed, the chairman tells the company secretary, and company secretary meets each one of them individually, interacts for let's say an hour or so, and the feedback is given based on their expertise, and then we place them, of course leaving aside the chartered accountant who would be in the audit committee. Otherwise, based on their expertise, we make them chairman of the respective committees, so that we are able to extract value from them on those committees. And then similarly in the strategy meet also, like in our board, what happens is the agenda items are piloted by the respective executive management, and then directors are like they are able to contribute. As you said, some have to say something and something to say. So both types of mix are there, but we allow the free flow discussion on all the agenda items. And then one thing which I can say proudly is, must have been the case with most of the companies, we have never faced a situation in our board where we had to put an agenda item to vote. There has never been a dissent. There could be a case where the independent directors wanted more information or more clarification or a detailed presentation. So the management takes it back, brings it back in the next meeting. And coming to the point of 7 days, so we have a practice like most of the companies would have. Certain agenda items are sent 1-2 days in advance, but a couple of directors opposed to it, independent directors, and they said, sorry, we haven't been able to read this agenda item, so don't want discussion on this. This is an important agenda item. So management took it back, and the next month again it was given, and then it got approved also. So full I would say respect to the views of independent directors is given, their observations are taken, and accordingly the board meeting.
As you want to
So,
come in on that?
Mr. Damodaran, 7 days is a concept is in India. I am on the board of 2 companies. One is in Maldives and one is in Tanzania. When I became the board, I expected that I will, like in India, I will also get the agenda and notes 7 days in advance. To my surprise, I got 24 hours before the meeting. I said, 24, tomorrow is the meeting, I am getting today the meeting. So this is a practice which is prevalent in our country.
This is in Mauritius.
Mauritius and
Mauritius, you have the same 3 guys who are directors on all companies.
No.
Yeah, because you must have 2 resident directors, And if you go to their offices on the doors, you'll find the name boards of lot of companies, including yours.
No, here we have ADB, we have IFC, and we have HDFC as the investors, and we all have a representative on those companies. So these are means, if you shouldn't see ADB is there, IFC Washington is there, HDFC, but there are at most I tried my best, but I don't get the document 48 hours before the meeting. So now I have changed myself for the board. Okay, I have to be prepared and read those agenda items in 48 hours.
Overnight.
It's overnight, you have to read it. So in India we say 7 days because the secretarial standards have,
because the law provides.
Because the law provides. But it doesn't mean that I can't send few agenda items 48 hours before or 2 days before the meeting. Because everything can't be, you can't expect everything to be ready 7 days in advance. So we do also send. Most of our 90% document goes 7 days before, but the presentation and all goes 1 day or 2 days prior to the meeting.
I have a suggestion which we've recommended to quite a few companies. If an item cannot be sent to the board 7 days in advance, and if it is to be discussed in the board, the managing director or the chief executive must certify 2 things. 1, this item could not have been got ready earlier. It takes a brave man to say that, but he should say that. Number 2, it is important enough to be discussed in this board meeting and cannot wait for the next. You put this certification in place and you will find everybody conforms to 7 days. Yeah.
I still...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mic and then after that you. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a view on this organization strategy, what you said. I feel it is the management who has to drive organization strategy. They have to set the organization strategy. And because the management knows the competition landscape, competition intelligence, business model, organization insight, and it is a strategy document should be placed before the board for basically endorsement by board.
Should it be endorsement?
Endorsed.
Somebody used the word rubber stamp earlier. That's
No,
why
not
I'm
in that
asking.
way.
Yeah.
Endorsing by the board, or they can give their valuable suggestions. They can ask relevant questions, but to ask board to set the strategy for the organization.
That expectation doesn't exist because, see, the first draft of a strategy document is premised on knowledge.
Correct.
Knowledge is something that sits with management.
Yeah.
So you got to know your business, your competition, your markets, your products, whatever.
Correct.
The board cannot do that for you.
Board cannot.
But then at that meeting that Suri mentioned, a separate meeting where there's a free flow of ideas, the board will challenge that. The board is expected to challenge. What is it? See, I do a lot of work on board management relationship. And one of the things I have told people is this: it cannot be peaceful coexistence. The minute you have peaceful coexistence between the management and the board, it's best to disband both and let the company run on its own steam, right? The board's job is to constructively challenge. I always say there must be constructive tension between the board and the management. That's the only thing that... Sorry, you're saying something.
Yeah, I just had a last point. I think the company secretary has to grow with the company. In a lot of cases I have seen, especially prior to listing, see, the caliber of the company secretary is something X, and there the promoter may be holding some 60-70%, whatever is there, and he or she calls the shots. I am the boss, do what I say. But when you are headed for listing 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, you need to transform the thinking of the promoters to say that once you start accepting money from outside, you are no longer the sole boss, you have to be accountable to a whole lot of people. I think that transition from unlisted to listed, and once you are listed, the companies keep growing, X, Y% rate. Unless the company secretary grows with the company, I think then at some point of time, as I said earlier, he or she will be only a keeper of records and minutes and that kind of thing. He will not be a strategic advisor or a governance professional. I think this growing with the company is very, very critical.
But you're assuming that promoters are all bad people, professionals are good people? Because I distinguish, and I do this very often, between professional-led companies and professionally led companies. It's not the same.
Yes.
I don't want to take names, but I can give you examples of people who have risen from the ranks, become the top boss in the company, and then treated it like the personal fiefdom. And I've also seen promoters who are very, very sort of, shall we say, respectful of the contribution that others make. I've seen both types. That's why I don't believe this business of, the promoter is a bad guy. He must. We've had, in India, most businesses are family businesses. These are businesses that have been set up by people. Yes, they have a stake, they have skin in the game, but some of them are far-sighted enough to understand. In fact, one of the promoters was the one who helped me articulate this, which I share with a lot of people, that an independent director exists in the boardroom to save the promoter from himself or herself. Because if you didn't have independent directors, you might be tempted to do things which in the presence you might not be able to do. So you look at IDs as a mechanism to save yourself, which is a very enlightened way of looking at IDs in boardrooms. And I heard this first from a promoter. It was not something that I came up with. There's one question. Yes.
Sir, in a promoter-driven company, how do you ensure that most of the people who said about external advices and things like that, and when promoter says, is this within the law, do you really require this to happen, and if not, then we do not want to do it? So even, how do you ensure those compliances, which is not mandated but required?
No, you're talking about legal compliances. There the company secretary should. I'm not saying put a foot down, because the foot might hurt sometimes, but certainly persuade them that, look, this is non-negotiable. Compliance with law and regulation is non-negotiable. Everything else you can discuss.
Yes.
No, sir, in terms of the information to be placed before the board.
Yes. Information, if a director asks for information, in fact, one company that we worked with recently, one of the complaints of the management was about a particular director. She wants information every day. She keeps asking for some information or the other. I said, you must be thankful. Is that information relevant to the business? And the person who told me this, the chief executive, said it is. I said, then why are you complaining? She has a right as a director to get information. She's informing herself. Once she gets the impression you are not withholding information, that you are not giving wrong information, you are not misleading, then a confidence develops. This arises from a lack of confidence in the beginning, that the director thinks, no, we are just being ignored, we are being blindsided, we are unlikely to get to know what we need to know. In fact, inspection reports. Sometimes, summaries are prepared which miss the main text of the inspection report, and you gloss over everything. Audit committee chairs presenting to the board, what do they say in the few minutes that is given to them? That this is an unmodified report of this. But there are several other things that the auditor told you. Auditor might not have put a qualification in the report, but you need to tell the board that. Many people hold back that and say that now you can, audit committee has recommended, you can okay it. Not the best way to do. Sorry, your hand is up. Yes.
So I wanted to know your views since you've seen boards before Companies Act 2013 came about and
Yes.
now. Earlier, when independent directors were allowed to be granted stock options versus now when they're not allowed to be granted stock options, is there a difference in their approach in terms of having skin in the game? So, if you grant stock options.
Very good question. I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I am in a minority of people who believe that independent directors should be given stock options. And I'll tell you why. There are three ways in which you can compensate an independent director. Compensate in a loose sense. One is sitting fees which you pay when he or she comes to the meeting, right? The second is a profit-linked commission. And there again, you can go up to 1%, but our analysis, and we bring out a lot of reports in our company, shows that nobody is anywhere near 1%. The most charitable of them must be 0.3, 0.35%. That's as far as they get, right? The third instrument is stock options. Now, the entire objection to this is, these are people who are not in the business full time. Why should you give them stock options? There will be short-termism. They will look at the movement of the shares. It will not give them an objective view. There are ways to deal with it. You say that these are your stock options. You cannot deal with these until you are 2 years out of the board. Keep a period after. If I'm leaving today, the next 2 years, I shouldn't be able to sell those things. I would have exercised the options. I would have got the shares, but I shouldn't be able to sell them. See, what prevents me as a director from buying shares in the market? And I might get it on the basis of UPSI, which none of the, the previous panel gave us excellent framework, and yet I suspect something might slip through. No framework is perfect. Nothing prevents me from buying and selling shares in the market. I happened to see a company many years ago, luckily, where the company secretary's family members had bought shares in the market. And he was the one who was certifying regularly that there was no violation. When finally something blew up, we found that his relatives were a very clever man. Not the wife, not the son, but the nephews and nieces were the ones that bought on the basis of UPSI. Right. So I think 2013 Act took away this because of a feeling that directors were being compensated for doing no work. If you actually gave them stock options, and unlike commissions where I've been arguing that do a robust board evaluation and compensate people on the basis of what the evaluation says about them, don't give horses and donkeys the same food. It's not good. You must give them different things. But stock options, you can certainly vary. Somebody will get more, somebody will get less, based on his or her contribution to the company, right? So maybe if you're an audit committee chair, independent director, you might get more stock options if you're doing your job properly. It's possible. I don't think it's a bad instrument. It's an instrument which should come with a lot of checks and balances in terms of how you deal with it. Like if you are in a company, people might say you must sell all the shares that you have. You might have got it before you joined the company, and the market might be depressed. Should you be compelled to sell at a loss? No law can hold a gun to your head and say, you've joined the company, all your existing shares, you do that. There is an instrumentality called a blind trust. Park it in that trust. If you don't have a trading plan, very few people have gone for trading plans because you're betting on the unknown. But have a blind trust. Park that in the trust. When you leave the company, you deal with it, not otherwise. Till then, let it remain. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I have been making a representation to both MCA and SEBI to amend this. Let's see.
No, these have been off and on. These conversations have been there. It can't happen. I can share this with you. As a former bureaucrat, I can share this with you. When ministry officials look at this and they look at who are the people likely to benefit, I said, this guy was also on a fixed salary with us till the other day, till he retired. Why should he get more money? Right?
You're right.
You will find all these articles which Economic Times brings out every year. 10 highest compensated independent directors. Where does this come from? This is the, shall I call it, relative deprivation of those who are not yet on boards.
Yes.
And same thing has happened with stock options. They lied to a parliament committee that very few countries in the world have stock options, when the fact is that most countries have some version of stock options. They gave wrong information. I personally believe that that is not a bad thing. That's my view, but it's a minority view. A lot of people think anyway independent directors don't do work, so why should they get anything at all? So, sorry, yeah.
Sir,
So
where a company has decided to
140, we have to finish.
Yeah.
so where a company follows an in-house mechanism for doing board evaluation.
Yes.
So can you share some practical guidance or practical tips where we can make it more effective as a company secretary?
My first question is, should you be doing in-house? It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying every year go and spend some money on some consultants. People like me will benefit, but you needn't do that every year. But certainly once in 3 years you should get an external evaluation done, because that's the only way you can benchmark your internal studies with the external evaluation. The second thing is, what's the problem with internal evaluation? These are all people sitting in the same boardroom, right? They will not give you honest feedback on what they actually think. We have gone through this exercise in a private company where there was an 86-year-old veteran chartered accountant on the board. In his time, a former president, etc., in his time, a very good director. But then health catches up, sleep catches up, you sleep in boardrooms. During our process of evaluation, we heard from nearly everybody, oh, he was very good some years ago, he should have left the board 5 years ago at least, but he's still on the board and he sleeps most of the time. So we do a two-part evaluation. Stage one of the directors, himself 80 years old, had written about this man that he is our expert, he is the one we go to, etc., etc., etc. Very positive feedback. But stage two is when I have the personal conversation. So I asked this director, what do you think about so-and-so? And he told me exactly this. He's overstayed his welcome on the board. He should have left long ago. He comes, and he sleeps on the board. He doesn't wake up even when the tea and biscuits come, to go back to the point we were discussing earlier. So the disconnect between what is written, and when I told him, but that's not what you have written. He said, you surely don't expect me to write all of this, right? So that disconnect, I don't want to be found out saying that I've said something negative about a fellow director. One last thought I will share with you, because Ajay reminds me it is time. We shouldn't hold you back from lunch. What does Schedule 4 say about evaluation? One of the things it says is that when you are evaluating a director, the entire board except the director is a party to that. In one company, a reputed company, I won't take names, they followed this process. So everybody was sitting there. They started the evaluation. First was somebody's evaluation, he went out. After 4 minutes, he was called back. Second person, after 4 minutes, called back. Third person, not called back at all. He was out for some 25 minutes. He has finished all his emails. He has finished his phone calls, everything. Now still nobody is calling him back. What is the thought uppermost in his mind? These other two guys were called back quickly. So somebody is saying that I am not a good director. Somebody is assessing me negatively. Otherwise, what is the 25-minute discussion going on? Then he was called back. Now what happens? He walks into the boardroom and he is looking at the people to see who is the guy who might have spoken against me. And in India, what happens very often, I'm sure all of you have seen this, many people don't look at you in the eye, they keep doing this. So some director might have been seeing his phone or looking at his papers or something, walked inside. This guy is not looking at you, think, so this is the chap that must have squealed against me. So what have you done? By strictly following the law, you have converted a cohesive board into a board where seeds of doubt and dissension have come. So this has to be done. Evaluation is a very, we've been doing it for years now. It's a very sensitive exercise, starting with sensitizing the board why you need an evaluation. Many people will say, we were invited here as director. Why should we be evaluated? Somebody thought we'll add value, he called us, now you're saying we have taken exam. Doesn't work. Thank you. Thank you for being a very, very good audience, even though I'm cut into your lunch time, I'm sure.
Thank you, panelists, for a very absorbing session. May I now request Mr. Damodaran to please present a memento to each panelist.
I don't get anything, no? I was standing there,
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. We are now at the concluding part of the program. May I now request Mr. Damodaran to make the concluding remarks.
So a gentleman was invited for dinner, and at the end of the dinner he was told, you have to make a speech. He said, I have two versions. Which one do you want? I have a shorter version, longer version. So he was told, tell us both. Shorter version was thank you. The longer version was thank you very much for being here with us. You've been a phenomenal audience, and we hope we'll remain in touch. We hope that some of our services will appeal to you, and we will certainly continue this kind of a conversation to see how we can strengthen the institution of company secretaries, because as we've called it, you are the pivots of the board. You are the ones on whom the board revolves. Thank you very much.